Crash landing. The deafening blare of alarms filled the bridge of the UES Horizon as Captain Elena Reeves fought to keep her ship from tearing itself apart. Red emergency lights cast an ominous glow across the controls, illuminating the fear on the faces of her crew. Status report. Elena barked, her fingers dancing across the helm console as she tried to stabilize their descent. Lieutenant Kira Chen, her navigation officer, responded through gritted teeth. Hull integrity at 47% and dropping. We've lost engines 2 and 3. Shields are offline. Elena cursed under her breath. What should have been a routine patrol through the Omega sector had turned into a nightmare when they stumbled upon a Zrathi warship. The reptilian aliens had opened fire without warning, their superior firepower overwhelming the Horizon's defenses in a matter of minutes. Any response to our distress call? Elena asked, knowing the answer before it came. Communications Officer Jared Hawkins shook his head, his voice grim. Negative, Captain. We're too far out. By the time anyone receives it, we'll be... A violent tremor rocked the ship, cutting off Jared's words. Elena watched in horror as cracks spiderwebbed across the view screen, offering glimpses of the angry red planet rushing up to meet them. All hands, brace for impact, Elena shouted into the ship-wide comm. She turned to her crew, her voice softening. It's been an honor serving with you all. The Horizon plummeted through the planet's atmosphere, trailing fire and debris. Elena's last conscious thought was a silent prayer that at least some of her crew would survive what was to come. When Elena awoke, the first thing she noticed was the acrid smell of burning circuitry. Pain lanced through her body as she tried to move, pinned beneath a section of collapsed bulkhead. The bridge was eerily silent, save for the occasional spark and groan of stressed metal. With a Herculean effort, Elena managed to push the debris off her legs. She stumbled to her feet, fighting waves of nausea and dizziness. The bridge was in ruins, and her heart sank as she saw the motionless forms of her crew. Elena checked each of them, fighting back tears as she confirmed what she already knew. They hadn't survived the crash. She was alone. Forcing herself to focus, Elena salvaged what she could from the wreckage. Her emergency kit was still intact, containing basic medical supplies, a water purifier, and enough ration bars to last a week if she was careful. She also grabbed a handheld scanner and a plasma pistol from the weapons locker. As Elena made her way through the twisted corridors of the Horizon, she searched for any signs of life, but each sealed compartment she managed to open revealed only more casualties. By the time she reached the ruptured hull and stepped out onto alien soil, the grim reality had set in. She was the sole survivor. The landscape that greeted Elena was as beautiful as it was alien. Twin suns hung low on the horizon, bathing everything in a surreal orange glow. Rolling hills covered in iridescent vegetation stretched as far as the eye could see, interrupted only by towering rock formations that seemed to defy gravity. Elena's initial awe quickly gave way to caution as her training kicked in. This world, for all its beauty, was an unknown. Every plant, every insect-like creature that buzzed past could be lethal. She needed to find shelter and assess her situation. As Elena hiked away from the crash site, her mind raced with possibilities. The Horizon's distress beacon would continue broadcasting, but given their location, it could be weeks or even months before anyone picked up the signal. Her best chance for survival was to find a source of water and establish a secure base camp. The alien flora grew denser as Elena moved away from the barren area where the Horizon had crashed. Massive fern-like plants unfurled as she passed, their fronds shimmering with bioluminescent patterns. In other circumstances, she might have marveled at their beauty. Now she eyed them warily, half expecting them to be carnivorous. As the first sun began to set, Elena's scanner picked up traces of water. She pushed through a thicket of vines, their tendrils seeming to reach for her as she passed. On the other side, she found a small clearing dominated by a bubbling spring. The water sparkled invitingly, but Elena knew better than to trust appearances. She approached cautiously, using her scanner to analyze the liquid. To her relief, it was remarkably similar to earth water, with only trace amounts of unfamiliar minerals. After running it through her purifier, Elena took a tentative sip. It was cool and refreshing, with a slight metallic aftertaste. With her most immediate need addressed, Elena turned her attention to shelter. The spring was surrounded by a cluster of large, boulder-like formations. Upon closer inspection, she discovered that one of them had a hollow interior, accessible through a narrow opening. Elena squeezed inside, finding it surprisingly spacious. The rock would provide good insulation and protection from the elements. More importantly, the single entrance would be easy to defend if necessary. As she set up her makeshift camp, Elena allowed herself a moment to process the day's events. The loss of her crew weighed heavily on her, but she pushed the grief aside. There would be time to mourn later. For now, she needed to focus on survival. Night fell quickly on this alien world, bringing with it a chorus of unfamiliar sounds. Eerie howls echoed in the distance, punctuated by the occasional screech or rustle from nearby vegetation. Elena sealed the entrance to her shelter as best she could, keeping her plasma pistol close at hand. Sleep came fitfully, filled with nightmares of the crash and unseen predators lurking in the dark. Elena jolted awake several times, her heart racing, only to find herself still alone in the alien night. As the twin suns rose, bathing the landscape in pale blue light, Elena emerged from her shelter. She spent the morning exploring the immediate area, cataloging potentially edible plants and setting up rudimentary alarms around her perimeter. Her scanner picked up several life signs in the surrounding area, but nothing large enough to pose an immediate threat. Still, Elena remained vigilant. She had no illusions about her place in this world's food chain. By midday, Elena had established a routine. She rationed her food carefully, supplementing it with local flora that her scanner deemed safe. The spring provided a steady supply of water, and she began to feel more confident about her chances of survival. That confidence was shattered on the third day when Elena's scanner picked up a massive life sign moving in her direction. She scrambled to gather her supplies, knowing her small shelter wouldn't offer much protection against a large predator. As Elena emerged from the rock formation, she caught her first glimpse of the creature. It was enormous, easily the size of a small shuttle. Its body was covered in overlapping plates that shimmered like oil on water. 6 powerful legs propelled it forward with surprising speed, while a cluster of eye stalks swiveled independently, scanning the area. Elena's breath caught in her throat as one of those alien eyes fixed on her. The creature let out a bone-shaking roar and charged. Elena ran, her heart pounding in her ears. She dodged between rock formations, trying to put obstacles between herself and the monster. But the alien predator was relentless. It smashed through smaller boulders as if they were made of paper, gaining ground with each earth-shaking step. Elena's lungs burned as she pushed herself to run faster, knowing that to slow down meant certain death. As she vaulted over a fallen tree-like plant, Elena's foot caught on a vine. She tumbled to the ground, crying out as pain shot through her ankle. The thunderous footsteps of her pursuer grew louder. Elena rolled onto her back, raising her plasma pistol with trembling hands. The creature loomed over her, its massive form blotting out the suns. Elena fired, the plasma bolt sizzling against the monster's armored hide. It seemed to only enrage the beast further. As it reared back, preparing to strike, Elena closed her eyes, bracing for the end. But the killing blow never came. Instead, a high-pitched shriek filled the air, followed by the sound of something impacting the creature's armor. Elena's eyes snapped open to see a blur of motion as something small and fast darted around the predator's head. The monster roared in confusion and pain, trying to swat away its new attacker. Elena watched in astonishment as a swarm of what looked like metal insects descended on the creature. They latched onto its armor, their sharp mandibles finding weak points and tearing into the flesh beneath. Seizing the opportunity, Elena scrambled to her feet, ignoring the pain in her ankle. She limped away as fast as she could, not daring to look back until she had put considerable distance between herself and the battle. When Elena finally paused to catch her breath, she was deep in an area of the alien forest she hadn't yet explored. The vegetation here was denser, with enormous tree-like structures towering overhead. Their trunks pulsed with an inner light, and Elena could have sworn she saw patterns moving beneath the bark. As her adrenaline faded, the pain in Elena's ankle flared. She leaned against one of the glowing trees, sliding down to sit at its base. She needed to rest and reassess her situation. The encounter with the predator had driven home just how precarious her position was on this alien world. Elena was so lost in thought that she almost missed the movement in her peripheral vision. She turned her head slowly, her hand inching towards her plasma pistol. What she saw made her freeze in disbelief. A figure emerged from behind one of the pulsing trees. At first glance, it appeared to be some kind of plant, with a body composed of interwoven vines and leaves. But as it moved closer, Elena realized it was far more than a simple vegetable. Its face was a cluster of sensory organs, arranged in a way that was unsettlingly reminiscent of human features. The creature stopped a few meters away, regarding Elena with what she could only interpret as curiosity. It made a series of clicks and whistles, gesturing with appendages that looked like a cross between branches and tentacles. Elena's mind raced. Was this the being responsible for saving her from the predator, or was it simply drawn by the commotion? Either way, she was in no condition to run if it proved hostile. Slowly, carefully, Elena raised her empty hands in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I mean you no harm," she said, knowing the words themselves were meaningless to the alien, but hoping her tone would convey her intent. The plant being tilted its head, the pattern of lights beneath its surface shifting rapidly. It took a step closer, then extended one of its vine-like appendages towards Elena. Heart pounding, Elena reached out her own hand. As their limbs touched, she felt a tingling sensation, almost like a mild electric current. The alien's surface rippled, and suddenly, Elena was overwhelmed by a flood of images and sensations. She saw flashes of the alien world from perspectives she could barely comprehend. Vast underground networks of roots and fungi, carrying information and resources across continents. Conflicts with other sentient species, battles fought with technology that blurred the line between organic and machine. And through it all, a sense of profound loneliness. This being was an outcast, the last of its kind on a world that had moved on without it. As the visions faded, Elena found herself gasping for breath. The alien withdrew its appendage, its lights pulsing in a pattern that somehow conveyed both excitement and apprehension. Elena's mind reeled as she tried to process what had just happened. Somehow, the alien had shared its memories, its very essence, through that simple touch. And in doing so, it had recognized her as a kindred spirit, another being alone on this harsh world. With that realization came a glimmer of hope. Elena was no longer alone in her struggle to survive. She had found an ally, one with knowledge of this planet and capabilities she was only beginning to understand. As the alien extended its appendage once more, Elena didn't hesitate. She took it, feeling the strange tingling sensation again. This time, she focused on projecting her own thoughts and experiences, her crash, her loss, and her determination to survive and find a way home. The plant being's lights flickered rapidly, and Elena somehow knew it had understood. It tugged gently on her hand, urging her to follow. Elena stood, wincing at the pain in her ankle, but finding it somehow diminished after the alien's touch. As they moved deeper into the bioluminescent forest, Elena felt a mix of trepidation and excitement. She had no idea what challenges lay ahead, but for the first time since the crash, she allowed herself to believe that she might actually survive this ordeal. The suns were setting as Elena and her new alien companion disappeared into the glowing undergrowth, two outcasts united by circumstance and the universal drive to endure. Whatever this strange world had in store for them, they would face it together. Hostile environment. As the alien forest grew denser, Elena struggled to keep pace with her plant-like companion. The being, which she had started calling Zark, based on the closest approximation of the sounds it made, moved with fluid grace through the undergrowth. Its vine-like limbs seemed to instinctively find the best path, while Elena stumbled over roots and ducked under low-hanging branches that pulsed with inner light. Despite her fatigue and the lingering pain in her ankle, Elena couldn't help but marvel at the alien ecosystems surrounding them. The forest floor was a riot of colors, with patches of what looked like moss glowing in shades of blue and purple. Floating spores drifted through the air, their bioluminescent trails creating mesmerizing patterns in the dim light. Zark paused periodically, extending a tendril to touch various plants. Each time, its body would pulse with light, and Elena got the impression it was communicating or perhaps even drawing energy from the forest itself. She wondered, not for the first time, about the extent of Zark's abilities and its relationship to this strange world. As they traveled, Elena's scanner picked up increasingly diverse and numerous life signs. The forest teemed with activity, much of it hidden from her human senses. Occasionally, she caught glimpses of creatures scurrying through the underbrush or flying between the glowing trees. Some were as small as insects, while others were easily the size of earth elephants. One particularly memorable encounter occurred as they crossed a clearing dominated by enormous, bulbous structures that resembled oversized puffball mushrooms. As Elena approached, the nearest mushroom suddenly deflated with a loud hiss. A cloud of spores erupted from its top, momentarily obscuring her vision. Elena instinctively held her breath, fearing the spores might be toxic. But Zark quickly moved to her side, extending its tendrils to create a kind of living shield around her. The alien's body pulsed rapidly, and Elena felt that now familiar tingle of energy. When the spore cloud dissipated, she was surprised to find herself unharmed. Zark's lights flickered in what Elena was beginning to recognize as its form of communication. Through their growing bond, she got the impression that the spores, while not immediately dangerous, could have disorientating effects on non-native life forms. Zark had neutralized them somehow. "Thank you," Elena said, knowing the word meant nothing to Zark, but hoping her gratitude came through in her tone and body language. The alien's lights pulsed in response, and Elena felt a warm sensation that she interpreted as acknowledgement. As they continued their journey, Elena began to notice changes in the landscape. The terrain became more rugged, with jagged rock formations jutting up through the forest floor. The vegetation, too, took on a hardier appearance. The delicate, glowing plants gave way to tougher, more alien flora. Some had metallic sheens, while others seemed to undulate with a life of their own. Zark's demeanor changed as well. Its movements became more cautious, its sensory cluster constantly swiveling to scan their surroundings. Elena found herself mirroring its wariness, her hand straying to the plasma pistol at her hip. Their progress slowed as they navigated the increasingly treacherous terrain. Elena's muscles ached from the constant climbing and scrambling over rocks. Despite her physical discomfort, her scientific curiosity was piqued by the dramatic shift in the ecosystem. What caused this change? She wondered aloud, more to herself than to Zark. To her surprise, the alien responded by touching a nearby rock formation. Instantly, Elena's mind was flooded with images and sensations. She saw the landscape as it had been long ago, a lush, vibrant forest, much like the one they had left behind. Then came flashes of violence, massive explosions, energy weapons scorching the earth, and strange machines tearing through the vegetation. The devastation was followed by years of toxic rain and harsh radiation. As the vision faded, Elena stumbled, overwhelmed by the intensity of the shared memory. "A war," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "Your people fought a war here." Zark's lights pulsed slowly, in a pattern that Elena now recognized as sadness or regret. She reached out, gently placing her hand on one of the alien's tendrils. No words were necessary. They shared a moment of understanding, two beings united by the universal tragedy of conflict. Their moment of connection was shattered by a piercing shriek from above. Elena looked up just in time to see a winged creature diving towards them. It was unlike any bird she had ever seen, with a body that seemed to be a fusion of flesh and metal. Its wings gleamed like polished steel, while its beak was serrated like a saw. Zark reacted with incredible speed, its tendrils whipping out to pull Elena behind a nearby rock formation. The creature's beak struck the stone where she had been standing moments before, sending sparks flying. Elena fumbled for her plasma pistol, but Zark gestured for her to wait. The alien's body began to pulse with an intense, rhythmic light. The winged predator circled overhead, screeching in what sounded like confusion or frustration. Suddenly, a swarm of the metallic insects Elena had seen earlier erupted from the ground around them. They flew at a larger creature, their tiny mandibles latching onto its wings and body. The predator thrashed in the air, trying to shake off its attackers, before finally retreating with an angry cry. As the danger passed, Elena turned to Zark in amazement. "You control them," she said, gesturing to the retreating swarm of insects. "That's how you saved me from that monster when we first met." Zark's lights flickered rapidly, and Elena got the impression of both confirmation and a deeper explanation that she couldn't quite grasp. There was clearly far more to her alien companion than she had initially realized. As they resumed their journey, Elena's mind raced with questions. What exactly was Zark capable of, and where were they going? She had assumed they were heading for some kind of settlement or safe haven, but the increasingly hostile environment made her doubt that assumption. The terrain continued to grow more challenging as they progressed. The rock formations gave way to deep chasms and unstable ground. Strange, metallic plants sprouted from cracks in the earth, their sharp edges glinting dangerously in the fading light of the twin suns. Elena's fatigue was beginning to take its toll. Her movements became sluggish, and she found herself relying more and more on Zark's support to navigate the treacherous landscape. The alien seemed tireless, its plant-like body adapting effortlessly to the harsh conditions. Just as Elena felt she couldn't take another step, Zark came to an abrupt halt. Its sensory cluster swiveled rapidly, and its body pulsed with an urgent pattern of lights. Before Elena could ask what was wrong, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. "Earthquake," Elena gasped, struggling to maintain her balance on the uneven terrain. But Zark's reaction told her this was something far more dangerous. The alien's tendrils wrapped around her, pulling her close as it rapidly retreated the way they had come. Elena caught glimpses of the ground behind them cracking open, revealing a network of glowing veins beneath the surface. As they fled, Elena saw something emerging from the fissures. At first, she thought it was some kind of lava flow, but its movement was too purposeful, too alive. To her horror, she realized it was a massive, amoeba-like creature, its body a shifting mass of what looked like liquid metal. Zark propelled them forward with incredible speed, its tendrils finding purchase on the unstable ground where Elena's feet would have slipped. But the amorphous monster was gaining on them, its fluid body allowing it to flow over obstacles that slowed their progress. Just when it seemed the creature would overtake them, Zark made a sudden turn, ducking into a narrow crevice in a nearby cliff face. The opening was barely wide enough for them to squeeze through, and Elena heard the screech of the monster's metallic body against the rock as it tried to follow. They emerged into a small cavern, dimly lit by bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls. Elena collapsed to the ground, her lungs burning as she gasped for air. Zark's tendrils unwrapped from around her, and the alien moved to the cavern's entrance, its body pulsing with light. To Elena's amazement, the rock around the entrance began to shift and grow, sealing off the opening. The agonized screeches of the amorphous creature faded as it was cut off from its prey. As the immediate danger passed, Elena turned to Zark with wide eyes. You manipulated the stone," she said, her voice filled with awe and a touch of fear. "Just what are you capable of?" Zark's lights pulsed slowly, and Elena felt a gentle probe at the edge of her mind. She hesitated for a moment before nodding, giving the alien permission to share its thoughts. The vision that flooded her mind was complex and alien, but Elena understood enough to grasp the basics. Zark's species had evolved alongside the planet itself, developing a symbiotic relationship with the world around them. They could communicate with and influence various forms of life, from the microscopic to the massive. But this ability came with a price. Zark's people had become too powerful, too divorced from the natural order. The war that had scarred the landscape had been a result of their hubris, and in its aftermath, most of Zark's kind had chosen to merge with the planet itself, becoming one with the world they had nearly destroyed. Zark was one of the few who had chosen to remain individual, to watch over the world and guide its healing. But this decision had left it isolated, cut off from the greater consciousness of its people. As the vision faded, Elena found tears streaming down her face. The loneliness and sense of purpose she had felt from Zark were overwhelming. She reached out, placing her hand gently on the alien's surface. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. Zark's lights pulsed warmly in response, and Elena felt a surge of gratitude and affection from her alien companion. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, two beings from vastly different worlds, united by circumstance and growing understanding. As Elena's breathing returned to normal and her racing heart calmed, she took stock of their surroundings. The cavern was small but seemed secure. The bioluminescent fungi provided enough light to see by, casting everything in a soft, ethereal glow. "I guess we're camping here for the night," Elena said with a weak chuckle. She began to unpack her meager supplies, grateful for the chance to rest and recover from their harrowing escape. Zark moved about the cavern, touching various points on the walls. Each time, the rocks seemed to shift slightly, and Elena realized the alien was further reinforcing their shelter. It was a reminder of just how much she still had to learn about her companion's abilities. As Elena settled in for the night, her mind buzzed with the day's events. The hostile planet had thrown challenge after challenge at her, each more bizarre and dangerous than the last. Yet somehow, against all odds, she had survived. More than that, she had found an ally, perhaps even a friend, in this strange alien being. Elena knew that tomorrow would likely bring new dangers and wonders. But for the first time since crash landing on this world, she felt a glimmer of real hope. With Zark by her side, perhaps she could do more than merely survive. Perhaps together, they could uncover the secrets of this planet and find a way for her to return home. As she drifted off to sleep, lulled by the gentle pulsing of Zark's bioluminescence, Elena's last thoughts were of the incredible journey that lay ahead. Whatever challenges this alien world had in store, she was ready to face them, no longer alone, but part of something greater than herself, unexpected ally. Elena awoke to the gentle pulsing of Zark's bioluminescence. For a moment, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings, she tensed. Then the memories of the previous day came flooding back, and she relaxed, offering her alien companion a small smile. "Good morning," she said, her voice rough with sleep, "or whatever passes for morning on this planet." Zark's lights flickered in response, and Elena felt a warm sensation that she interpreted as a greeting. As she stretched and checked her supplies, she noticed that the cavern entrance was now open, revealing a landscape bathed in the pale blue light of early dawn. Elena approached the opening cautiously, her hand instinctively moving to her plasma pistol. The terrain outside looked different from what she remembered. The jagged rocks and metallic plants were still present, but they seemed, softer somehow, less threatening. Zark moved to her side, extending a tendril to touch the cavern wall. Immediately, Elena's mind was filled with images and sensations. She understood that her alien friend had been busy while she slept, using its connection with the planet to alter their immediate surroundings, making them safer and more hospitable. "Thank you," Elena said, marveling at Zark's abilities. "I don't suppose you could do that to the entire planet. Make it a little less murderous." Zark's lights pulsed in a pattern that Elena had come to recognize as amusement, but there was an underlying sadness to it. Through their growing bond, she sensed that while Zark could influence small areas for short periods, widespread changes were beyond its capabilities. The planet's hostile nature was deeply ingrained, a result of the ancient war and subsequent evolution. As they prepared to leave their temporary shelter, Elena took stock of their situation. Her supplies were running low, and while Zark seemed able to sustain itself through some form of photosynthesis or energy absorption, Elena knew she would need to find a sustainable food source soon. "Any chance you know where we might find something I can eat?" Elena asked, trying to keep her tone light despite the growing concern in the pit of her stomach. Zark's response was to gently urge her forward out of the cavern and into the alien landscape. As they walked, Elena noticed subtle changes in the vegetation. Among the metallic and crystalline plants, she began to see forms that looked more organic, almost familiar. After about an hour of travel, they came upon a small grove of tree-like plants. Their trunks were a deep purple, with leaves that shimmered like oil on water. Hanging from the branches were fruit-like pods, about the size of mangoes, with a soft, pearlescent sheen. Zark gestured towards the pods, its lights pulsing in a pattern that Elena interpreted as encouragement. Still, she hesitated. "Are you sure these are safe for me to eat?" In response, Zark extended a tendril, plucking one of the pods and bringing it close to Elena's scanner. To her surprise, the readout showed a composition remarkably similar to Earth fruits, with high concentrations of sugars, fiber, and various nutrients. Cautiously, Elena took the pod from Zark. Its surface was cool and slightly yielding to the touch. She brought it to her nose, inhaling a scent that was floral and slightly spicy. Taking a deep breath, she bit into the fruit. The flavor explosion in her mouth was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was sweet and tangy, with complex undertones that reminded her of cinnamon, vanilla, and something entirely alien but delicious. More importantly, she felt no immediate adverse effects. "This is amazing," Elena exclaimed, quickly devouring the rest of the fruit. She felt her energy returning, the constant gnawing hunger of the past days finally subsiding. Zark's lights pulsed happily, and Elena got the impression that her alien friend was pleased with her reaction. They spent the next hour harvesting more of the fruits, with Elena using her emergency kit to fashion a crude carrying pouch. As they prepared to move on, Elena noticed Zark becoming tense, its sensory cluster swiveling rapidly to scan their surroundings. Before she could ask what was wrong, she heard it, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, small pebbles dancing with the vibration. Elena's mind flashed back to their encounter with the amorphous metal creature, but Zark's reaction told her this was something different, possibly even more dangerous. "What is it?" Elena whispered, her hand moving to her plasma pistol. Zark's response came not in words or images, but in a surge of pure emotion, a mixture of awe, fear, and reverence that left Elena breathless. Whatever was coming, it was something beyond her human comprehension. The rumbling grew louder, and the very air seemed to thicken. Elena's ears popped as the atmospheric pressure changed. Then, emerging from behind a distant ridge, she saw it. At first, Elena thought it was a storm cloud, a roiling mass of darkness moving against the sky. But as it drew closer, she realized with a start that it was alive. The entity was enormous, easily the size of a small city, its body a swirling vortex of what looked like living shadow. Tendrils of darkness extended from the main mass, touching the ground and leaving trails of altered terrain in their wake. Where the tendrils passed, the hostile metallic plants were transformed, taking on more organic forms. Elena stood rooted to the spot, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. This wasn't just a creature. It was a force of nature, a being so vast and alien that her human senses could barely comprehend it. Zark moved protectively in front of Elena, its body pulsing with intense light. To Elena's astonishment, the massive shadow being seemed to notice them. A tendril of darkness extended towards them, moving with surprising gentleness for something so immense. Elena's instincts screamed at her to run, but Zark's calm presence kept her in place. She watched, heart pounding, as a tendril of living shadow touched Zark. The alien's body lit up like a supernova, patterns of light racing across its surface in complex, beautiful patterns. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Zark and the shadow being communed. Elena felt waves of emotion and information washing over her, too complex and alien for her to fully understand. But she grasped enough to realize that this entity was one of Zark's people, one of those who had chosen to merge with the planet itself. As quickly as it had come, the moment passed. The shadow being withdrew its tendril and began to move away, its vast form rippling as it traveled across the landscape. In its wake, Elena saw the terrain changing, becoming more hospitable, more alive. Zark turned to Elena, its lights pulsing with excitement. Through their bond, Elena understood that the encounter had given Zark new information, a clearer purpose. There was a way to heal this world, to undo the damage of the ancient war, but it would require a journey to the heart of the planet itself. "You want us to go there, don't you?" Elena asked, already knowing the answer. To wherever that being came from. Zark's affirmative pulse was tinged with concern. The journey would be perilous, taking them through some of the most dangerous regions of the planet, but it also represented Elena's best chance of finding a way home. The technology and knowledge at the planet's core might hold the key to repairing her ship or sending a stronger distress signal. Elena took a deep breath, weighing her options. Stay in this relatively safe area, hoping for rescue that might never come, or embark on a dangerous journey with the promise of answers and a possible way home. In the end, it wasn't really a choice at all. "All right," she said, squaring her shoulders. "Let's do this. Lead the way." As they set out, following the path left by the shadow being, Elena felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The landscape around them was changing rapidly, becoming more vibrant and alive. But in the distance, she could see storm clouds gathering, flashes of unnatural lightning illuminating ominous shapes. Their path took them through a series of ravines, the walls covered in a riot of alien plant life. Some of the vegetation seemed to react to their presence, flowers turning to track their movement or vines reaching out as if to touch them. Elena kept close to Zark, trusting her alien friend to guide them safely through. As they navigated a particularly narrow passage, Elena's foot slipped on a patch of moss-like growth. She stumbled, her hand brushing against the ravine wall to steady herself. Immediately, she felt a sharp sting and yanked her hand back with a cry of pain. Zark was at her side in an instant, its tendrils gently examining her injured hand. Elena watched in fascination as tiny barbs, nearly invisible to the naked eye, withdrew from her skin. Almost immediately, she felt a burning sensation spreading up her arm. "Poison," she gasped, her vision beginning to blur. "Zark, I can't." Before she could finish her sentence, Elena felt her knees give way. Zark caught her, cradling her gently with its tendrils. As consciousness slipped away, Elena's last sensation was of Zark's body pulsing with intense, focused light. Elena drifted in a sea of feathered dreams. She saw visions of Earth, of her family and crew, all just out of reach. These faded into alien landscapes, beautiful and terrible in their strangeness. Throughout it all, she felt a constant presence, a gentle light guiding her back from the brink. When Elena finally opened her eyes, she found herself in a small clearing, surrounded by gently pulsing plants that seemed to form a protective barrier. Zark was beside her, its body dimly glowing in a rhythm that reminded Elena of a heartbeat. What happened?" Elena croaked, her throat dry and her body aching, as if she'd run a marathon. Zark's lights flickered to life, and Elena felt a wave of relief and affection from her alien friend. Through their bond, she understood that she had been unconscious for nearly 2 full cycles of the twin suns. The poison had very nearly killed her, but Zark had used its connection with the planet's life forms to synthesize an antidote. As Elena slowly sat up, she noticed changes in her surroundings. The clearing they were in seemed to be a haven of life amidst the harsh landscape. Soft, grass-like growth cushioned the ground, and the air was filled with floating spores that glowed with gentle bioluminescence. "You created all this?" Elena asked in wonder, gesturing to the oasis around them. Zark's response was a mix of affirmation and something more complex. Elena got the impression that while Zark had initiated the changes, the planet itself had responded, as if awakening to the possibility of renewal. As Elena regained her strength over the next few hours, she and Zark communicated more deeply than ever before. The alien shared glimpses of its past, of the civilization that had once flourished on this world before war and hubris had nearly destroyed everything. Elena, in turn, told Zark about Earth, about humanity's struggles and triumphs, their dreams of exploring the stars. She spoke of her own journey, the years of training and sacrifice that had led her to command the horizon. As the twin suns began to set, painting the sky in breathtaking hues of orange and purple, Elena felt a profound sense of connection, not just to Zark, but to the planet itself. She understood now that this world, for all its dangers, was alive in ways she could never have imagined before. "We should get moving soon," Elena said, slowly standing and testing her recovered strength. "I have a feeling our journey's just beginning." Zark pulsed in agreement, its lights forming patterns that Elena now recognized as excitement and determination. As they prepared to leave their temporary sanctuary, Elena felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just a stranded human trying to survive on an alien world. She was part of something greater, a journey that could reshape an entire planet and perhaps change the course of two civilizations. As they set out, following the fading trail left by the shadow being, Elena felt a mix of trepidation and exhilaration. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but it also promised wonders beyond imagination. With Zark by her side, Elena was ready to face whatever challenges its alien world had in store. The unlikely allies, a human explorer and a plant-like alien, moved forward into the gathering darkness, their combined determination lighting the way towards an uncertain but promising future, forging trust. As Elena and Zark ventured deeper into the planet's changing landscape, the bond between them continued to grow stronger. The initial wariness and culture shock had given way to a deep, mutual understanding. Yet, as they faced increasingly dangerous challenges, that trust would be put to the ultimate test. The path left by the shadow being led them through a series of ever-changing environments. One moment, they were traversing a field of crystal formations that hummed with strange energies. The next, they were carefully picking their way across a plain of shifting, quicksand-like terrain that threatened to swallow them whole. Elena's scientific mind was in overdrive, trying to categorize and understand the impossible things she was witnessing. "It's like the entire planet is in flux," she mused aloud as they paused to rest atop a hill overlooking a valley filled with swirling, multicolored mists. "Is this normal, or is it because of that shadow creature's passage?" Zark's response came as a series of pulsing lights and gentle mental impressions. Elena understood that while change was constant on this world, the shadow being's presence had accelerated and intensified the process. The planet was awakening, remembering what it once was before the Great War had scarred it so deeply. As they descended into the misty valley, Elena felt a strange tingling sensation all over her skin. The multicolored vapors swirled around them, and she noticed with alarm that where the mist touched her exposed skin, it seemed to seep in, leaving behind faint, shimmering patterns. "Zark," she said, trying to keep the panic out of her voice, "what's happening to me?" Her alien companion reached out, its tendrils gently touching the patterns on Elena's skin. Through their bond, Elena felt a mixture of fascination and reassurance. The mist, Zark communicated, was a physical manifestation of the planet's memories. By absorbing it, Elena was connecting more deeply with the world around her. As they progressed through the valley, Elena began to experience flashes of alien memories. She saw great cities of living crystal, felt the joy of minds linked in vast, harmonious networks, and witnessed the terror and devastation of the war that had torn it all apart. The experience was overwhelming, and more than once Elena found herself stumbling, disoriented by the flood of alien thoughts and emotions. Each time, Zark was there to steady her, its presence a constant anchor in the sea of unfamiliar sensations. By the time they emerged from the mist-filled valley, Elena felt fundamentally changed. The shimmering patterns on her skin had faded, but she could still feel the planet's memories humming just beneath the surface of her consciousness. I think I understand now, Elena said softly, looking at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. What happened here? Why you stay behind when the others merged with the planet? The responsibility you feel. Zark's lights pulsed warmly, and Elena felt a wave of gratitude and affection from her friend. The shared experience had brought them closer, deepening their trust and understanding in ways that transcended their biological differences. As they continued their journey, Elena found that her newfound connection to the planet enhanced her ability to navigate its dangers. She could sense shifts in the terrain before they happened, anticipate the behavior of hostile life forms, and even communicate with some of the less aggressive plant species they encountered. However, this deeper connection also made her more vulnerable to the planet's lingering pain and trauma. There were moments when waves of ancient anguish would wash over her, leaving her gasping and disoriented. During these episodes, Zark's steady presence was her lifeline, helping her weather the emotional storms. Their progress, while steady, was not without serious challenges. One particularly harrowing experience came as they attempted to cross a vast chasm. The only way across was a bridge of intertwined, living vines that seemed to react to their presence, writhing and shifting unpredictably. I don't suppose you could ask them to hold still, Elena joked nervously as they stood at the edge of the precipice, looking out at the undulating bridge. Zark's response was a complex series of light pulses that Elena interpreted as both amusement and concentration. She watched in fascination as her alien friend extended several tendrils, touching the nearest vines. The entire bridge seemed to shudder in response, and for a moment, Elena thought it might collapse entirely. Instead, the chaotic movement of the vines gradually became more orderly. They began to weave themselves into a more stable configuration, forming a narrow but seemingly solid path across the chasm. That's incredible, Elena breathed, marveling at Zark's abilities. Shall we? They started across, with Zark taking the lead. Elena followed closely, trying not to look down at the dizzying drop below. About halfway across, she felt the bridge begin to tremble. A quick glance back revealed the cause. The vines at the edge they had come from were beginning to unravel, the effect quickly spreading towards them. Zark, Elena called out in alarm. It's collapsing. Her alien companion turned, quickly assessing the situation. In that moment of distraction, a section of the bridge beneath Zark gave way. Elena watched in horror as her friend plummeted, managing to catch hold of a dangling vine at the last second. Without hesitation, Elena dropped to her knees, reaching out towards Zark. "Hold on," she yelled, stretching as far as she could without losing her own precarious balance. Zark's tendrils strained upwards, but the distance was too great. Elena could feel her friend's strength failing through their bond. In that moment, she knew what she had to do. Taking a deep breath, Elena pushed off from the bridge, launching herself towards Zark. As she fell, time seemed to slow. She saw Zark's lights pulsing in alarm, felt the rush of air around her, and then impact. Her hands closed around Zark's tendrils just as the vine it had been clinging to snapped. For a heart-stopping moment, they were in free fall. Then, with strength born of desperation, Zark whipped out several tendrils, managing to snag multiple vines. Their descent jerked to a painful halt, and Elena cried out as she felt her shoulder wrench from the sudden stop. But they were alive, dangling precariously above the misty depths of the chasm. "Well," Elena gasped, managing a shaky smile as she looked up at Zark, "this is quite a mess we've gotten ourselves into." Zark's lights flickered rapidly, and Elena felt a mixture of gratitude, concern, and something akin to exasperated affection through their bond. Slowly, carefully, Zark began to use its tendrils to climb, pulling them both up towards the remnants of the bridge. It was a grueling process. Every movement risked dislodging their tenuous hold, and Elena's arms screamed with the effort of holding on. But finally, after what felt like hours, they managed to haul themselves back onto a stable section of the living bridge. Elena collapsed, her entire body trembling with exhaustion and residual adrenaline. Zark curled protectively around her, its lights pulsing in a soothing rhythm. As her racing heart began to slow, Elena felt a deep wave of emotion from her alien friend, gratitude, admiration, and a fierce protectiveness. "You're welcome," Elena murmured, patting one of Zark's tendrils weakly. Maybe let's avoid any more bridges for a while, okay?" They rested there for some time, recovering their strength and allowing the living bridge to stabilize around them. When they finally resumed their journey, crossing the remaining distance with utmost caution, Elena felt that something fundamental had shifted between them. The trust between them, already strong, had been tempered by shared danger and mutual sacrifice. They were no longer simply allies of convenience, brought together by circumstance. They were true partners, each willing to risk everything for the other. As they stepped off the bridge onto solid ground, Elena turned to Zark with a smile. "You know," she said, "where I come from, going through something like that together would pretty much make us family." Zark's response was a warm pulse of light and a gentle tendril wrapped around Elena's shoulders in a gesture that could only be described as a hug. Through their bond, Elena felt a sense of agreement and belonging. Whatever differences existed between their species, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their journey continued, taking them through landscapes that grew increasingly surreal and dangerous. They traversed fields of metallic grass that sliced like razors, navigated forests where the very air seemed alive with darting motes of energy, and crossed plains where gravity itself fluctuated unpredictably. Through it all, Elena and Zark worked in seamless tandem. Where once they had needed to consciously communicate and coordinate, now they moved as one, anticipating each other's actions and compensating for each other's weaknesses. Elena's growing connection to the planet, combined with her human adaptability and problem-solving skills, complemented Zark's deep knowledge and innate abilities perfectly. Together, they overcame obstacles that would have been insurmountable for either of them alone. One particularly memorable challenge came in the form of a vast, swirling vortex of energy that blocked their path. The maelstrom crackled with lightning and seemed to distort the very fabric of space around it. Attempts to go around it proved futile, as the vortex's influence extended far beyond its visible boundaries. "It's some kind of remnant from the war, isn't it?" Elena asked, feeling the ancient pain and rage emanating from the phenomenon. Zark's affirmative pulse was tinged with sadness. Through their bond, Elena understood that this vortex was a wound in reality itself, a festering reminder of the destructive powers unleashed in the conflict that had nearly destroyed this world. As they stood before the swirling chaos, Elena felt a strange resonance within herself. The memories she had absorbed in the Mist Valley stirred, and with them came a flash of inspiration. "Zark," she said slowly, an idea forming, "I think I know how we can get through this. But it's going to take both of us, working in perfect sync. Do you trust me?" The response was immediate and unequivocal, complete and total trust, without hesitation. Taking a deep breath, Elena reached out to take hold of Zark's tendrils. She closed her eyes, focusing on the connection between them, on the memories of this world that now lived within her. Gradually, she began to hum a complex, multi-layered tone. Zark, understanding her intent, joined in. Its body began to pulse with light in perfect harmony with Elena's voice. Together, they created a symphony of sound and light, a counterpoint to the chaotic energies of the vortex. As their harmony grew stronger, Elena felt the vortex respond. The wild energies began to calm, the lightning becoming less frequent, the spatial distortions less severe. Slowly, carefully, they began to move forward, maintaining their song with unwavering focus. Step by step, they made their way into the heart of the maelstrom. The energies whirled around them, but could not touch them, repelled by the harmony they had created. It was beautiful and terrifying, a dance on the edge of oblivion. When they finally emerged on the other side, Elena fell to her knees, drained but exhilarated. Zark's lights pulsed weakly, equally exhausted by the ordeal. "We did it," Elena laughed, a touch of disbelief in her voice. "I can't believe that actually worked." Zark's response was a mixture of pride, awe, and deep affection. What they had accomplished was more than just passing an obstacle. They had begun the process of healing one of the planet's deepest wounds. As they rested and recovered, Elena reflected on how far they had come. From strangers thrown together by circumstance, they had become something more: partners, friends, family. Their trust in each other had become unshakable, a foundation strong enough to overcome any challenge. Looking ahead, Elena could see that their destination was drawing near. The horizon shimmered with strange energies, and she could feel a pull, a sense of anticipation building within both herself and Zark. Whatever awaited them at the heart of this world, Elena knew they would face it together. Their journey had forged a bond stronger than any biological difference, any cultural barrier. In each other, they had found not just an ally, but a true companion for whatever lay ahead. With renewed determination, Elena stood, reaching out to help Zark up. "Ready to save a planet?" she asked with a grin. Zark's answering pulse of light was all the response she needed. Side by side, the human and the alien set off towards their destiny, their trust in each other lighting the way through the alien twilight. The hunt begins. As Elena and Zark pressed on towards the planet's core, the landscape continued to shift and change around them. The terrain became increasingly surreal, defying the laws of physics as Elena understood them. Floating islands of crystalline structures drifted overhead, while rivers of luminescent liquid flowed upwards against gravity. Despite the alien beauty surrounding them, Elena couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. "Zark," she said, her voice hushed, "do you feel that? Like we're being watched?" Her companion's lights pulsed in a pattern of affirmation and concern. Through their bond, Elena sensed that Zark had been aware of the subtle scrutiny for some time, but had hoped to avoid alarming her. As if triggered by their acknowledgement, the atmosphere around them suddenly changed. The air grew thick and heavy, charged with an electric tension that made the hair on Elena's arms stand on end. In the distance, they heard a low, resonant hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "What is that?" Elena asked, her hand instinctively moving to her plasma pistol. Before Zark could respond, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Cracks appeared in the crystalline surface, spreading outward like a web. From these fissures, a strange, silvery mist began to seep out, quickly enveloping them. Elena's first instinct was to hold her breath, but Zark quickly communicated that the mist wasn't immediately harmful. As the silvery substance swirled around them, Elena felt a tingling sensation all over her skin. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, she thought she was losing consciousness. When her sight cleared, Elena gasped in shock. The world around them had transformed, gone were the surreal landscapes and floating islands. Instead, they found themselves in what appeared to be a vast, high-tech chamber. Sleek, metallic walls pulsed with lines of energy, and holographic displays flickered to life all around them. "What just happened?" Elena asked, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Is this real or some kind of illusion?" Zark's response was a complex series of light pulses that Elena interpreted as uncertainty mixed with recognition. This place, Zark communicated, was both familiar and alien, a remnant of the ancient civilization that had once flourished on this world, but changed, evolved over the millennia since the Great War. Before they could fully process their new surroundings, a booming voice filled the chamber, speaking in a language that Elena didn't recognize but somehow understood. Intruders detected, initiating containment and analysis protocols. Instantly, the air around them shimmered, and Elena felt an invisible force trying to hold her in place. Zark's tendrils whipped out, wrapping protectively around her as they both struggled against the unseen restraints. "Wait," Elena called out, hoping whatever intelligence controlled this place could understand her. "We're not intruders. We're here to help, to heal the planet." For a moment, there was silence. Then the voice spoke again, this time in a tone that seemed more curious than hostile. "Anomaly detected. Unrecognized species present. Initiating deep scan." A beam of blue light enveloped Elena, and she felt a strange tingling sensation as it passed over her body. She gritted her teeth, fighting the urge to struggle against the scan. "Species identified, human. Origin, extraplanetary. Threat level, unknown." The voice paused, then continued with a note of surprise. "Symbiotic bond detected with indigenous life form. Analyzing." The beam shifted to Zark, intensifying in brightness. Elena felt a surge of discomfort through their bond, but sensed Zark's determination to endure the scan. "Indigenous life form confirmed. Designation, caretaker. Anomaly, individuated consciousness retained. Purpose, unknown." The scanning beam disappeared, and Elena felt the invisible restraints release them. She stumbled slightly, steadied by Zark's supportive tendrils. "State your purpose, anomalous entities," the voice demanded. Elena took a deep breath, realizing that this moment could determine the success or failure of their entire journey. She straightened her posture and spoke with all the conviction she could muster. "We've come seeking a way to heal this world, to undo the damage caused by the ancient war and restore balance to the planet. I'm Elena Reeves, a human explorer who crashed on this world, and this," she gestured to Zark, "is my friend and ally. Together, we've traversed your world, witnessed its pain and its potential for renewal. We're here to help, if you'll let us." There was a long pause, during which Elena could almost feel the unseen intelligence processing her words. Finally, the voice spoke again. "Purpose acknowledged. Initiating historical database comparison. Stand by." The chamber around them came alive with holographic displays, showing rapid-fire images of the planet's history. Elena saw glimpses of the world as it once was, a thriving, advanced civilization living in harmony with a sentient planet. She witnessed the outbreak of the war, the deployment of terrible weapons that scarred the world to its core. And then something unexpected. The displays showed the aftermath of the war, but instead of a dead world, Elena saw the beginnings of recovery. She watched as the planet's own defenses activated, creating the hostile environments she and Zark had navigated, not out of malice, but as a quarantine, a way to protect the healing world from further harm. "Historical analysis complete," the voice announced. "Intention verified. However, protocol demands further testing. The hunt begins." "The hunt?" Elena asked, a note of apprehension in her voice. "What does that mean?" In response, the chamber began to shift and change around them. Walls rose from the floor, forming a complex maze. In the distance, Elena heard mechanical whirs and clicks, as if something was being activated. "To prove your worth and commitment to healing this world," the voice explained, "you must navigate the trials of renewal. Survive the hunt, reach the core, and you'll be granted the power to fulfill your purpose. Fail, and you'll join the countless others who have become one with the world's defense systems." Elena felt a chill run down her spine at these words. She turned to Zark, seeing her own mix of determination and apprehension reflected in her friend's pulsing lights. "The hunt begins now," the voice declared. "May your symbiosis prove strong enough to overcome the challenges ahead." With that ominous pronouncement, the voice fell silent. In the distance, Elena heard the sound of heavy, metallic footsteps approaching. "I guess we don't have much choice," Elena said, checking her plasma pistol and surveying their surroundings. "Any idea what we're up against, Zark?" Her alien companion's response was uncertain. This place, these trials, were not part of the memories Zark had of its civilization. Whatever they were about to face, it had evolved beyond Zark's knowledge. As the footsteps grew louder, Elena and Zark pressed close together, ready to face whatever came their way. The first challenge emerged from around a corner, a massive quadrupedal robot with multiple sensor arrays and weapon systems integrated into its sleek frame. "Okay," Elena muttered, "definitely not what I was expecting." The robot's sensors locked onto them, and with surprising speed for its size, it charged. Elena and Zark dove in opposite directions, narrowly avoiding the initial assault. The machine skidded to a halt, its head swiveling as it decided which target to pursue. Elena fired her plasma pistol, the energy bolt scorching the robot's armor, but causing no significant damage. The attack, however, drew its full attention. As it turned to face her, Zark seized the opportunity. Tendrils shot out, wrapping around the robot's legs. For a moment, it seemed like a futile gesture against the massive machine. But then, Elena watched in awe as Zark's body pulsed with intense light. The tendrils began to glow, and where they touched the robot, its metal surface began to corrode and warp. The robot thrashed, trying to shake off Zark's assault. Elena didn't waste the opportunity. She sprinted forward, looking for any vulnerable spots in the machine's construction. Near its head, she spotted a cluster of more delicate sensor equipment. "Zark," she called out, "boost me up." Without hesitation, Zark extended a tendril. Elena grabbed it, and with perfect synchronization born from their shared experiences, Zark launched her into the air. She soared over the robot's thrashing form, plasma pistol aimed at its sensors. Time seemed to slow as Elena fired, again and again, each shot finding its mark with uncanny precision. The robot's sensors exploded in a shower of sparks, and it let out a mechanized howl of confusion. Elena landed hard, rolling to absorb the impact. As she came to her feet, she saw the robot stumbling blindly, its movements becoming increasingly erratic. Zark delivered the final blow, its tendrils piercing deep into the machine's now vulnerable joints. With a final, grinding shriek, the robot collapsed, its systems shutting down. Elena approached cautiously, hardly daring to believe they had overcome the challenge so quickly. "We did it," she breathed, looking at Zark with a mixture of relief and excitement. That wasn't so. Her words were cut off by a rumbling sound. The floor beneath the fallen robot began to shift, and before their eyes, the machine sank into the ground. In its place, new walls rose, changing the layout of the maze around them. Of course, Elena sighed. It couldn't be that easy, could it? Zark's lights pulsed in a pattern that Elena interpreted as wry amusement. Through their bond, she sensed both pride in their victory and caution about what lay ahead. This, they both realized, had only been the first of many trials they would face in the hunt. As if to confirm their thoughts, the disembodied voice spoke again. First trial complete. Adapting parameters, increasing difficulty. In the distance, Elena heard the sound of multiple mechanical entities activating. The hunt, it seemed, was just beginning. "Well," Elena said, checking her plasma pistol's charge and squaring her shoulders, "I guess we'd better get moving. Ready for round 2, partner." Zark's affirmative pulse was accompanied by a surge of determination and loyalty through their bond. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Side by side, the human explorer and the alien caretaker set off deeper into the maze. The path to healing this world and finding Elena's way home would be fraught with danger, but with each trial overcome, their resolve only grew stronger. As they navigated the shifting corridors, facing increasingly complex and dangerous adversaries, Elena realized that this hunt was more than just a test. It was a forge, tempering their alliance into something unbreakable. With every challenge, every narrow escape, the bond between them grew stronger, their actions becoming more synchronized, their strategies more refined. They were no longer just Elena and Zark, individuals from different worlds. They were becoming something new, a symbiotic partnership greater than the sum of its parts. And as they pressed on, both sensed that this evolution might be the key, not just to surviving the hunt, but to fulfilling that ultimate goal of healing this wounded world, escape and revelation. As Elena and Zark progressed deeper into the ever-shifting maze, the challenges they faced grew increasingly complex and dangerous. Each trial seemed designed not just to test their individual abilities, but to push the limits of their symbiotic relationship. They battled swarms of nanobots that could reconfigure themselves into various deadly forms. They navigated rooms where gravity shifted unpredictably, forcing them to rely on split-second coordination and trust. They faced holographic illusions so realistic that only their deep connection allowed them to distinguish truth from deception. Through it all, Elena and Zark's bond continued to evolve. Elena found herself instinctively understanding complex aspects of the planet's biology that she had never studied. Zark, in turn, began to exhibit flashes of human-like intuition and creativity in problem-solving. As they paused to catch their breath after a particularly harrowing encounter with a reality-walking field, Elena leaned against a wall, her mind racing. "Zark," she panted, "is it just me, or are these trials changing us somehow?" Zark's response was a complex series of light pulses that Elena now understood as clearly as if they were spoken words. The alien confirmed her suspicions. Their symbiosis was deepening beyond anything Zark's species had experienced before. They were becoming something new, something unprecedented. Before they could discuss further, the maze around them began to shift once more. Walls retracted, ceilings lifted, and suddenly they found themselves in a vast open chamber. At its center stood a structure that made Elena's breath catch in her throat. It was a massive, pulsating crystal, easily the size of a small building. Energy coursed through it in mesmerizing patterns, and as Elena looked closer, she realized with a start that she could see images within its facets, glimpses of the planet's past, present, and possible futures. "Is this the core?" Elena whispered, all evident in her voice. Zark's affirmative pulse was tinged with a mixture of reverence and trepidation. This was indeed the heart of the planet, the nexus point where they might finally have the chance to initiate the healing process they had fought so hard to reach. As they approached the crystal, the disembodied voice that had guided their trials spoke once more. "You have survived the hunt, proving your worth and the strength of your bond. Approach the core of convergence and prepare to face the ultimate challenge." Elena and Zark moved forward cautiously, alert for any final traps or tests. But as they drew closer to the crystal, they felt no resistance, no sense of danger. Instead, there was a growing feeling of rightness, as if they were exactly where they needed to be. When they were just a few steps away from the crystal's base, its surface began to ripple and shift. A section of it liquefied, forming a reflective pool suspended in mid-air. Within this liquid mirror, Elena saw not her own reflection, but a series of rapid-fire images. She saw herself as a child, gazing up at the stars with wonder. She relived the moment she decided to become an explorer, the years of training and sacrifice that followed. She watched the launch of the Horizon, felt again the mix of pride and trepidation as they set out into the unknown. Then came images she didn't recognize, possible futures she realized. She saw herself returning to Earth the hero, sharing the knowledge gained from this alien world. But she also saw darker possibilities, a universe where she never made it home, where the lessons of this planet were never shared. Beside her, she sensed Zark experiencing a similar flood of memories and potential futures. Through their bond, she caught glimpses of the alien's long life, the terrible war that had scarred this world, and the lonely vigil Zark had maintained in the centuries since. "To heal this world," the voice intoned, "you must be willing to give everything. The process will reshape you, as it reshapes the planet. There is no guarantee of success, and failure means becoming one with the world, your individual consciousness lost to the greater whole. Knowing this, do you still wish to proceed?" Elena turned to Zark, their eyes, or in Zark's case, sensory clusters, meeting. In that moment, no words were necessary. They'd communicated in the instantaneous language of their symbiosis, weighing the risks, acknowledging their fears, and ultimately reaffirming their commitment to each other and to their shared goal. Together, they turned back to the crystal and spoke as one. "We do." The liquid mirror expanded, enveloping them in a cocoon of shimmering energy. Elena felt a moment of panic as she lost all physical sensation, but Zark's presence in her mind anchored her. They found themselves in a realm of pure information, their consciousnesses expanding to encompass the entire planet. They saw the world as it truly was, a living entity of incredible complexity, wounded but not defeated by the ancient war. Together, Elena and Zark began the work of healing. It was a task beyond imagination, requiring them to rewrite the planet's ecological code on a fundamental level. They purged lingering corruption from the war, reactivated dormant systems, and carefully balanced competing forces to create a sustainable harmony. As they worked, Elena and Zark felt themselves changing, their individual identities blurring at the edges as they merged more deeply with each other and with the planet itself. There were moments when Elena feared she would lose herself entirely, but always she felt Zark's unwavering presence, a reminder of who she was and why they were fighting so hard. Time lost all meaning in this realm of pure thought and energy. It could have been minutes or millennia that they worked, reshaping the world molecule by molecule, thought by thought. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of labor, they sensed that the work was nearing completion. The planet's systems were aligning, a new balance emerging from the chaos. But as the final pieces fell into place, they realized there was one last, crucial decision to be made. The healing process had changed them irrevocably. They were no longer fully separate beings, nor were they entirely merged with the planet. They existed in a state of flux, balanced on the knife edge of individual identity and cosmic unity. They could complete the merger, becoming one with the healed world and with each other. It would mean the end of Elena and Zark as individuals, but their combined consciousness would live on as the guiding force of this reborn planet. Or they could fight to retain their individual selves, pulling back from the brink of total unity. It would mean giving up the godlike awareness and power they now possessed, but it would allow them to return to their separate lives, forever changed, but still recognizably themselves. In that timeless moment, suspended between existences, Elena and Zark communed one final time. They shared every memory, every hope and fear, every facet of their beings. They acknowledged the incredible journey that had brought them to this point, the bond that had grown between them, stronger than either could have imagined possible. And then, with a mixture of grief and determination, they made their choice. Elena gasped as sensation returned in a rush. She found herself on her knees before the crystal, Zark's tendrils wrapped supportively around her. The chamber around them was transformed. Gone were the sterile mechanical surfaces, replaced by a harmonious blend of technology and living matter. We did it," Elena breathed, her voice hoarse as if from long disuse. "The planet, it's healed," Zark finished, and Elena realized with a start that she could hear her friend's voice now, not just in her mind, but audibly. Zark's body had changed, becoming a more defined form that pulsed with internal light. "You can speak now," Elena said, a smile spreading across her face despite her exhaustion. "And you can understand the language of the world," Zark replied. "We have both been changed by our experience." As they helped each other to their feet, still marveling at their new forms and abilities, the disembodied voice spoke one final time. "The healing is complete. The quarantine is lifted. Caretakers, you have fulfilled your purpose beyond all expectations. What was broken is now whole. The future of this world is now in your hands." With those words, the crystal before them shimmered and transformed. It shrank and reshaped itself until it was a small, handheld device of incredible complexity. "A seed," Zark explained, gently taking the device, "containing the knowledge and power to shepherd this world into its new era." Elena nodded, understanding flowing through her. "And a key," she added, to the ancient network that once connected your people's worlds. We could use it to send a message, to call for help. Or to find you a way home, Zark finished, a note of sadness in its voice. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their options heavy between them. They had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, healing not just the planet but themselves in the process. But now they faced a new choice: stay together on this reborn world, or part ways, using their new knowledge and abilities to help their respective peoples. Elena looked at Zark, her heart full of conflicting emotions. I don't know if I can leave, she admitted. This world, what we've done here, it's bigger than just me and my desire to go home. Zark's body pulsed with warm light. And I am not certain I can ask you to stay, to give up your world and your people. You have already sacrificed so much. They gazed at each other, their deepened bond allowing them to communicate volumes without words. They both understood the magnitude of what they had accomplished and the responsibility that came with it. Finally, Elena squared her shoulders, a determined glint in her eye. Who says we have to choose? She asked. We have the knowledge of an ancient interstellar civilization at our fingertips. Maybe we can find a way to do both, to help this world and to bridge the gap between our peoples. Zark's form brightened with excitement. A new kind of exploration, it mused. Not just of space, but of possibilities. A chance to prevent the mistakes of the past and forge a better future for all our kinds. Elena nodded, feeling a surge of hope and purpose. It won't be easy, she said. We'll be charting unknown territory, facing challenges we can't even imagine yet. But we'll face them together, Zark replied, extending a tendril which Elena grasped without hesitation. As they stood there, human and alien united by an incredible journey and an unbreakable bond, the chamber around them began to shift once more. But this time, it wasn't reconfiguring into a new challenge. Instead, it was opening up, revealing a vista of the healed world beyond. Elena and Zark stepped forward, hand in tendril, ready to embrace their new role as caretakers and explorers. The planet spread out before them, vibrant and alive, a testament to the power of cooperation and the indomitable spirit of those who dared to hope. Their adventure, they both realized, was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever wonders or dangers they might face, they would meet them as they had everything else, together. As the twin suns of the alien world rose on a new era, Elena Rees and Zark, once strangers from different worlds, now bonded companions and guardians of a reborn planet, set out to explore the limitless possibilities that awaited them. The story of the human explorer and the alien outcast had become a legend of hope, a beacon for future generations who would look to the stars and dream of the incredible adventures and connections waiting to be forged in the vast expanse of the cosmos.